You know, much of marketing is intuitive. Marketers use their gut instinct in making creative decisions about products, marketing communications, and even pricing. However, most of our marketing decisions today, especially in this modern age, are based on information. Information is the fuel that runs the marketing engine. Successful planning requires that managers make informed decisions, and marketing research is the critical function that provides this necessary information. Collecting marketing research information is only one piece of the puzzle, however. The marketing information system helps users by bringing a variety of information together and distributing it via reports to a variety of users. So it's appropriate that early in our study of marketing that we look at how we gather and use information, because that will inform most of what we do as marketers. We're going to look at two kinds of marketing systems. You'll want to make sure that you understand the difference. Marketing information systems, or we'll sometimes shorthand those and call them MIS, are those which feed internal company data. Information gathered via marketing intelligence or marketing research activities, and information found via searching acquired databases and special software programs that help us to do that, which are often queried by analysts. And they generate reports that are containing useful information which marketing decision makers can find helpful in fulfilling their duties. Now, there's four main sources of information in a marketing information system. We'll get into these in some detail, but just to summarize, they are internal company data, marketing intelligence, marketing research, and acquired databases. We use computer hardware and software to crunch that data and produce the reports, and the result that we get is information for marketing managers to use to make decisions. So this is the general view of an MIS. It could be either cheap or it could be very unsophisticated, using a PC and just an Excel database, Excel spreadsheet to make a database, or it could be very sophisticated. I sold Walmart $120 million worth of hardware and software in a single deal in support of marketing information, and for other purposes they use too. So let's look at each of these kinds of data. A variety of information exists within the firm that can be helpful to marketers. Some examples of these might be sales data that you have sorted by date, product category, brand, or by customers, as well as information pertaining to out-of-stock situations or defective products. Also, the tracking of marketing inputs, and this is the amount of money spent on advertising or sales promotions as an example, as well as the resulting outputs, things like coupon redemption rates, for example. This has the advantage of being readily available because it's internal and probably owned by your company, but it doesn't tell the whole story. And so the next source of information that we get is called marketing intelligence, and this is the collection of and analysis of publicly available information about consumers, competitors, and developments in the environment. Competitors often reveal information about their company that can be very useful to you through their annual reports, or through business publications or interviews, through trade show exhibits, and also on their web pages. Firms can also collect marketing intelligence by monitoring media sources and through industry network contacts that they have. But some of the most useful information comes when we go beyond what's available in public sources and we do some marketing research. Marketing research is the process of collecting, analyzing, and interpreting data about customers, competitors, and the business environment to improve marketing effectiveness. Now, some firms will maintain an in-house research department that conducts studies on its behalf. Many firms, however, hire outside research companies. There's two main sources for marketing research data. A large amount of useful information is available in the form of acquired external databases. Firms may acquire these databases from any number of sources, including the government, the U.S. Census, for example. The government has a wealth of information that's available for free, at least for no additional cost. We're paying for it through taxes, through their census website, as well as others. You may want to look at the U.S. government census data just to see all the data that's available there. Things like auto registrations and license information is often sold by states to interested parties, and this can be very helpful if that's a business that you're in. There are also many firms that gather data for different companies to use. For example, you may know the Nielsen company that gathers rating information for TV and radio to be able to see what the ratings are for a particular program. You pay for this data, but it's not gathered specifically for you. Now, some of the most useful data comes when we do specific research focus on the company's needs. Marketing research involves 7 steps. Now, this is a great chart. I don't expect you to memorize this, but I hope you'll remember that you have it when you need to undertake some kind of marketing research at some point in the future. But let's look at each of these steps briefly, and then we'll get into some detail when we meet in class. You may want to pause the video for just a minute, look over this chart first, and kind of get a good overview of it. The first step in the marketing research process is to clearly understand what information managers need, defining the problem. And there are 3 big components that we have to defining the research problem. The first one is to specify the research objectives. What questions will the research attempt to answer? The next thing is to identify the population of interest, the set of consumers that we're going after. What are the characteristics of those consumer groups that we're interested in? And then we need to place the problem in some sort of environmental context. What factors in the firm's internal and external business environment might influence the situation? And so we look at each of these as we're trying to define what the research problem is. The second step of the research process is to decide on a plan of attack. The plan is the research design, and this specifies exactly what information marketers will collect and what type of study that they're going to do. Research designs generally fall into 2 broad categories, what we call secondary research and primary research. Important terms for you to remember. What do these mean? Well, in secondary data, this is data that's been collected for some purpose other than the problem at hand. If secondary data are available, it saves the firm some time and some money as it avoids the expense of designing and implementing a new study. But there are good and bad things about secondary data. It's good in that it's already on hand. It's easy. It's cheap. You may not have to pay any additional money to use it. But it was collected for a different purpose maybe than what you specifically need, and it does have the risk of maybe being out of date or inaccurate because the situation has changed. Now, primary data, on the other hand, refers to data that's collected by the firm to address a specific question. When a company needs to make a specific decision, secondary data may not be enough. Primary data may include demographics, psychological information, awareness, attitudes, and opinions. And primary data has pros and cons as well. It's collected for this specific research plan, so it's probably going to be really well fit to what you need and tailored to the new problem. But it does take time to do it. Sometimes it can take a lot of time to get permissions and to actually conduct the research, do the experiment, do the survey. And the most significant downside to it is that it can be very costly, whether you hire people and have employees to do it in-house, or if you hire an outside firm, they can charge you dearly to be able to get this information, but it may be worth it. Now, the second step of the research process involves determining the research design. Here is where we decide first if secondary is going to be sufficient or if we need to do primary research. If we're going to use secondary research, then what are going to be the sources that we're going to use, internal or external? If, on the other hand, we decide we need to do primary research, then we need to decide what kind that we want to do. And the first category is exploratory. This is where we're trying to get a better understanding of what the problem is. Maybe we're identifying new opportunities. This is often what we call qualitative in nature rather than quantitative. The well-known example of this is focus groups, where we get a group together. We're going to give you an opportunity to either be a part of or to observe a focus group in action in class. And then descriptive research is where we probe systematically into the marketing problem and we base our conclusions on a large sample or group of participants. Results are typically expressed in some kind of quantitative or statistical terms, and we might use surveys or interviews to gather that data. And then we have this final group we call causal research, not to be confused with casual research. This is causal research. In this case, we use experiments to better understand cause and effect relationships among two or more variables. Now in class, I'll tell you a story about how the technology that I sold to Walmart was used to understand why beer and diapers were purchased at the same time. So what are the two main ways of gathering primary data? Well, the two ways that we do it are through survey and observation. But there are other cool ways that technology is being used to understand how and why consumers make the decision that they do. And these are things like neuromarketing and also virtual stores. And I'll tell you more about these in class, but just be aware that we have a lot of different ways that we can collect this data. Now you have a number of options for how you collect data via surveys. We'll review these in class, and you should be ready to discuss the pros and cons of each of these methods. For example, in the mail area, mail used to be a primary way to collect data for surveys, but now is considered to have the lowest response rate of any of the different kinds. And you might be ready to talk about which one has the highest response rate and what's more frequently used. Decisions made on the basis of marketing research are only as good as the information on which they're based, and there's three factors that influence data quality. The first one of these is what we call validity, and that's the extent to which the research actually measures what it was intended to measure. The next consideration is reliability, which is the extent to which research measurement techniques are free of errors. And then finally, representativeness. You'll learn about the use of samples. We're taking a subset of the whole population to survey, and representativeness is the extent to which consumers in the study are similar to the larger group of which they're a part that we have an interest in. And we have to be concerned with things like self-selection bias, which is a threat to representativeness in the online and offline research kinds of designs that we do. And so quality is a big issue, and just as you see on the slide, the old theorem about idea about garbage in, garbage out is certainly appropriate in this area. Now researchers collect most of their data from a small proportion, or what we call a sample of the population that we're interested in. So based on the answers from this sample, researchers can generalize to the larger population. And so the process of selecting respondents for a survey is referred to as samples. So if we're interested in what kinds of trucks that men want to buy, ideally we would survey all of the men in the United States. Well, that's too expensive to do. So we take a representative sample of that, a much smaller group, and then we generalize based on what that sample tells us about what the larger population is likely to do. So in class we'll talk about the two broad categories of sampling, which are probability and non-probability sampling. Once we design our approach to collecting data, we actually get into the process of collecting it. We do the survey, we conduct the experiment, we make the observation. Next, we analyze the data. We'll usually set it up in some kind of table so that it makes sense to us and eventually will make sense to others. Data has to be analyzed and interpreted to be meaningful, and we will often do what's called tabulation, where we arrange data in a table or some other kind of summary form to get a broad picture of the overall responses to our survey or to our experiment or interviews. And then cross-tabulation is where we explore the data by subgroups in order to see how results vary across different kinds of categories. Now at the beginning we designed what we called a basic marketing information system. There's also, and that's represented in the slide you see here, but there's also a more sophisticated form of this that takes your analysis to the next level. And this is what's called the Marketing Decision Support System, or MDSS for short. The MDSS uses the same information that's in the basic MIS, but it allows the marketers to do more sophisticated analysis. The MDSS addresses problems that are too vague or unusual for the MIS system to easily answer. MDSS is more powerful because even individuals who aren't computer experts can run some custom reports on their own via the interactive software that's available. Marketing decision support systems use both statistical tools and also modeling software tools. Statistical software is helpful in examining complex relationships among variables. Things like perceptual maps and multidimensional scaling are a couple of examples. Modeling software allows decision makers to ask what-if kinds of questions. And in class, we'll discuss some examples of the kinds of questions that the MDSS can answer. I was involved in most of my career in selling these marketing decision support systems, so I think we'll have an interesting discussion about that. The process we discussed today and that you'll learn more about in class and in your reading of the chapter is designed to take raw, unorganized facts, we call this data, and through analysis and interpretation, turn it into something useful. We call that information. Information is the fuel that feeds the marketing engine, and you'll want to learn more about how you can best carry out the important tasks associated with designing and conducting marketing research and pulling from the results the useful insights that can come out of this process. So good luck on your quiz. I'll see you in class and look forward to discussing this further.